And just before we get into it, actually, none of what we're saying today is financial advice. We're not financial advisors. We're not trying to tell you what sort of strategy to do, how to live your life, or anything like that. We're just giving you an alternative on how to protect yourself for the war and the weird world that we're currently in. So worst investment of the last 50 years would have been dollars and money. But what do you mean by there's no counterparty risk when it comes to gold and silver?
So a perfect example, and I've got a few examples here of people that don't know what bullion is, never seen it or anything, but a good example is something like this here. That's just a 1 ounce gold coin. That's from last year out of the Perth Mint. So something like this, 100 ounces of these of gold back in the day, say around 1970, could buy you kind of your entry-level house in that market. And in today's money, 100 ounces of gold is about $500,000, and you can still get into an entry-level house if you do exchanges for cash. So that proves there's thousands of years of history of how it can maintain your purchasing power. And it's a physical asset you hold. You fully control it. It's not a digit on a screen. Like, terrify anyone that suddenly they can start your bank account at a split second. I'm not sure what would. So this just gives you options, much like the crypto, which you said you're into as well. It just gives you options in all different markets. Yeah.
I guess the cool thing when I started really thinking about it was about 2008. I was watching Robert Kiyosaki's videos. I think it was Mike Maloney once when he was back with Kiyosaki back in the day. And I'd bought coins when I was a kid, like in 99, 2000, didn't know what I was buying, just buying coins, collecting them. It was back in 2008 when I first started really getting deep into when we saw the GFC occur. And I was watching some Kiyosaki videos with Mike Maloney back in the day. And I was thinking to myself, $1,000 can't buy what $1,000 bought 5 years prior. But 1,000 ounces of silver or 100 ounces of gold or whatever it was, 1,000 years ago, it was still 1,000 ounces, and in another 1,000 years it'll still be 1,000 ounces. It'll still exist, and it'll still have the same sort of purchasing power. Like there was talks of like what a suit would cost. Like a suit back in the day was like 1 ounce of gold would buy you a nice tailor-made suit, and the same thing would apply today. Cool. And if you were to go back to like your 18-year-old self, what would you tell yourself now, like from learning of where you are today and your mindset around all this?
So I guess a big thing as like a late teenager or early 20s, I feel like there's so many influences these days that can impact your life. So it's very important to make your own opinion up on that. And number one, if someone's given you their opinion or their so-called advice, what have they done? So if they haven't done what they're preaching about, I wouldn't really take it on board. So it's more so like making your own decision up. We're inundated with information on all different platforms these days on a daily basis, but it's important for you to kind of hold what sits true with you, what sits right with your morals as well, kind of sifting through the BS to work out what you believe and follow that path. You might be wrong, but it's really important. From probably a late teens, like a lot of people are influenced with who they hang out with and all that kind of thing. So just to kind of make your mind up on what you want to do and sift through it. So I guess the main mindset was I was literally sitting mates down and saying, hey, you've got a decent sum in the bank. What are you doing? You're going to hold debt or get in a debt now and hold it through the next cycle, or are you going to sit it as cash? And I think the best thing about bullion and what kind of attracted me to it, and it's much like any kind of thing that's an investment, it's obviously non-emotional, but if the numbers line up, the numbers line up. So you can't argue with the numbers. So the bullion side of thing obviously has thousands of years of history on how it behaves. So that's a very good predictor for the future. And one of the most powerful things about bullion and why I got into it is because if you can hold debt in today's money against a cash flow asset, much like a property, which I've got a few through you, and then hold a physical asset that's going to grow with inflation, you're paying off your debt with an inflated dollar. So I treat my bullion much like my bank account. I don't want money in the bank. I want it either in a property, it can be anything, collectibles, cars, wine, watches, anything. I just don't want it in cash for what's coming in the next decade. So yeah, and that's where I found bullion. A major plus about bullion is its liquidity. So if you need to sell 100 grand in a day, you sell it in a day. If you've got a fancy Rolex worth 100 grand, that might take you 3-6 months to sell, unless you sell it back to a dealer and get a much lower price than what it's actually worth. So the liquidity of bullion is why I treat it as my cash in the bank. And that's why I feel more comfortable sleeping at night, having a physical asset, maintaining my wealth rather than digits on a screen.